Hello, I'm Sean Murray, and this is The Conversation, where we take an alternative look at political events and current affairs through an Irish lens. In this show, we hope to pick, probe, investigate and uncover the stories that you want to hear. We go where mainstream won't go. This week we look at the Milltown Cemetery attack on the 16th of March 1988. In the aftermath of Michael Stone's attack on peaceful mourners at the Gibraltar 3 funerals, 3 people lay dead. Catholic civilians Thomas McErlean 20, John Murray 27 and IRA member Caoimhín McBrady 30 were killed when they attempted to capture the loyalist gunman. This week I speak to a family member of one of those victims. But before we do, let's get a quick overview on this week's topic.
On the 16th of March 1988, the funeral of 3 IRA volunteers was attacked at Milltown Cemetery in West Belfast. Volunteers Dan McCann, Mairead Farrell and Sean Savage had been executed 10 days before in Gibraltar by the SAS while on active service. Up to 20,000 mourners paid their respects to the 3 as the coffins made their way from St Agnes's Church in Andersonstown to Milltown Cemetery. As one of the coffins was lowered into their place of rest, 2 explosions shattered the silence that had descended around the graveyard. Amid the scenes of panic, it was quickly realised that the funeral was being attacked. In almost an instant, a number of young men witnessed a gunman who then began firing shots into the crowd. Dozens of men then began chasing the gunman towards the M1 motorway at the bottom of the cemetery. Images captured the attacker stopping, lobbing more grenades, and once again firing at mourners. He was eventually captured by the men as he attempted to hijack a car on the slipway. As he was being led away in the back of a car, he was rescued by members of the RUC. His name was Michael Stone, a loyalist killer who had murdered a number of innocent Catholics in the months before the attack. As many injured were being led away to hospital, it became apparent that 3 people had died. Thomas McErlean, John Murray, and Caoimhín McBrady were killed when they attempted to capture the loyalist gunman. 3 days later, at the funeral of Caoimhín McBrady, mourners once again thought another funeral was being attacked. As a car rushed towards the funeral procession, it was hemmed in by other vehicles, and the occupants, one of which was brandishing a gun, were disarmed, taken away by the IRA, and killed. Derek Woods and David Howes were members of the British Army. In a fortnight that had seen the worst violence in many years, the paradox between how the killing of the soldiers was reported by state media to that of the civilians killed at Milltown Cemetery only 3 days before, reinforced the view that the media were complicit in framing the conflict at the expense of nationalist victims.
And with that, I'd like to introduce my next guest. Peter Murray's brother John was killed as he attempted to apprehend Michael Stone during the attack that day. His bravery and concern for others is unquestionable. But lost in the tragedy of that day were the stories of the 3 that were killed. The Gibraltar incident, Michael Stone himself, and the deaths of the 2 British corporals later confined the names of Thomas, John and Caoimhín to a mere footnote. Not to their families and their community though. Today we will hear John's story. Peter, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Sean. Thank you.
So Peter, tell me about John growing up.
Okay, we grew up in the Lower Ormeau Road in Belfast there. Mum and Dad, and we had 7 of a family, 5 sisters, and there was myself and John. John was educated in Christian Brothers in Oxford Street. There was a wee tiny, it's like a tattoo parlour now. So it was a primary school there, and from there he got his level plus, and then from there he went over and he was educated in St Mary's Grammar School in the Falls Road here. After that, John was a keen sportsman. very much involved in Gaelic and hurling, which was strange for being over in the Ormeau Road, you know. So myself and John played both. So we graduated to play for O'Donovan Rossa on the Falls Road here. So sport was a big thing in John's life. But John was also, as a young man, just before he was deaf, when you think about it, you know, there wasn't much employment then, but John had his own business as a plumber. He was married with 2 kids, had his own house, and had pre-booked a holiday. So John had everything going for life just pre-Milltown Cemetery.
And tell me about him playing for Rossa, because I've heard a lot of friends up in Rossa, and they tell me that John was a cracking hurler. Yeah,
John was very much Gaelic and hurler, you know. John was like, I'd say he wasn't the most talented, but he was very brave. And then back in them days, the hurling and the football has changed. So it was very much a man's game when John was able to hold his own, particularly up down the country when you're maybe playing at Dunloys and Lockhouse, you know. John very much was more than able to hold his own both in Gaelic and football. But that was his get out, you know. That's what he enjoyed most in life.
And tell me, because I'm a past pupil at St Mary's Grammar School myself. Did you go to St Mary's yourself,
John? No.
How did it come about that John ended up in St Mary's Grammar? He must have been a very...
Yeah, well, in fairness, getting 11 plus even then was a big thing, John, you know. So I think my mum, who pushed education, you know, and back then it was education. So St Mary's had a good reputation. Plus John liked it because of the GAA aspect of the school as well. We're very much focused on football and hurling. But however, how we ended up playing for Rossa was that there was a small team in the Lower Ormeau Road. The Lower Ormeau Road is a really small community, but a very good community. There was a guy who tried to run a Gaelic team there, but because of lack of numbers, there was myself and 3 or 4 others ended up going over and joining Rossa. And it's hard to believe when you think in that car, a guy, Frankie Fox, a great GAA man, in that car was maybe 4 of us going over every Saturday morning to train with Rossa's under 12, under 14 team. That Paul McErlean was in his car, his father shot dead by loyalists on the Ormeau Road. Thomas Duffin in that car, his father killed in the boogies. Myself and John, so you know, Ormeau Road had it tight, just say, you know.
And as you say that, Peter, I was at an event last week for Teresa Clinton.
Yeah.
It was Teresa Clinton's anniversary last week, and the extent of the killings inflicted upon the Lower Ormeau community was it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a very small community, but it was maybe where the troubles were then. It was handy. It was 2 minutes away to get a Catholic walking up and down the road. So we were very concerned and worried, you know, because there was a lot of your neighbours who were basically just executed, you know, in them bad old days, you know. So growing up then, as I say, we went over to play Gaelic, and there was no Gaelic or hurling in South Belfast then, so it was a case of going over to the Rossa. And once we joined the Rossa, we felt at home then, you know, and we had many happy days there, you know. We played in the same teams together, you know. John actually captained the minor team. Rossa got the minor team against St John's, which was like a Celtic Rangers rivalry. Now, unfortunately, we lost that day, but it was a great honour for John, being an Ormeau Road man, to captain the minor team and play at a Caoimhín Park. That's a lucky man, like many of us, unfortunately. Many of the generations missed out on that chance. So John was full of life then, growing up, everything to live for. 2 young kids, Niall was 3 and Einstein was 1 just before that event, you know. So we had to bring Niall to training to get out of the house, and you know what it was like then. Yeah. So we had to bring Niall. Niall was running about Rossa Park while we trained, you know. So
brilliant.
They were great times.
And tell me about that day. What can you recollect about that day?
Well, Sean, as you say, that day was horrendous going up to that day. You know, I think 3 people were killed, the Irish people killed abroad. And then the funerals, you know, John would have always went to, you know, John would have went to the funerals that day. I don't know if I'm sure you're aware in the past, you know, remember Laurie Marley when they're dying? John would have went there because it was like just saying, look, mightn't agree with everything, but to bury our dead in a bit of dignity, you know. He took work 3 days off, so when Gibraltar came, John was always going to go to the funeral, you know, so and why wouldn't he? He was a friend of, a school friend of one of the lads who were over in Gibraltar, you know, so...
Danny McCann.
Danny McCann, yeah, Danny McCann.
Danny went to St Mary's also.
Yes, yeah, so they were schoolmates, you know what I mean, so that's connection, but John would have been there if it hadn't been Dan McCann anyway, you know. So basically, on that day of the funeral. I was working that day myself, but I knew my mum was there, and John was going to the funeral. So,
And just for context, sorry to butt in, Peter. You had mentioned Laurie Marley's funeral. You had Finbar McKenna's funeral the May before. For the audience's sake, Laurie Marley's funeral was badly attacked. I don't know how many days. Was it 3-4 days maybe?
3-4 days that it was funeral, but it was just sheer thuggery, you know.
Brutality from the RUC and attacking the funerals.
Yeah.
The same happened with Finbar McKenna's funeral on the Falls Road. They attacked the funeral and many people were batting charged and beaten. And of course, there were other funerals, if I can recollect, in South Armagh and stuff like that. Yeah, but it was a bad period.
Yeah, bad
and
period.
we're expecting the same at the funerals at Gibraltar, that for the funerals to be attacked.
Yes, obviously, you know, that day it was a bit of relief when you heard there was no police presence at the funeral that day. You know, it was a bit of a shock, but it was a more relief, because if you looked at the old footage of them days, it was horrendous what happened at funerals them days, you know. It should never happen in any civilised society, but anyhow, these things happened. But so, when there was no security present at the funeral, there was a relief, you know. I remember I was talking to Mum, says that, well, Mum was up at the grave, says everything's quiet, which was good. So, as news, I was working, and news came filtering through as such that there was an attack on the funeral, and you heard. Didn't hear anybody was dead, but there was people injured, you know. There was no mobile phones then, so these were on like 2 o'clock news, 1 o'clock news, you know, so there was an incident. Well, a couple of my friends, the next minute I seen driving into my work, you know, and a sort of way, Sean just hit me there and then, you know. I knew John was at the front, here's me, I hope there isn't something wrong here. So one of John's close friends, his business partner, who had a plumbing business with, as I said, he came over and says, look, Peter, John's dead here. So I get into the car. Well, trying to get to the hospital, there was a lot of roadblocks and they were stopping cars, and the car we went in, they wouldn't let us go through. I said, look, my brother's, he's dead in the hospital. We need to get into the hospital. We refused point blank to let us back. So I actually got out of the car and made my way by foot then to the Royal, went into accident emergency. And just imagine, it was just mayhem, because obviously there were 60 plus people injured in that attack. And obviously with rumour mills, a lot of people were converging in the hospital to see their loved ones or what was going on. And as soon as I walked in, I seen Father Reid, you know. Not that I knew Father Reid, I just seen this priest, and I just said, look, my brother's dead, my name's Peter Murray. And he says, come with me. So he took me to a room where John was lying, and my mum was there. Mum was a very strong woman, and she just said, and she was so proud of John, even though what happened, she just said, Peter, there he is. I just loved this man, loved him with my heart. And I was trying to be strong for Mum, you know. And my mum was so strong that she but I just couldn't hold the tears. I just collapsed that there he was. Nice man, everything to live for, and there he was, lying stone cold dead, you know what I mean, at 27 years of age. His whole life to live for us, you know. So it was very horrendous times then. There was talk then, I ended up back in John's wife's house, you know, we're waiting on the bodies to come back. So for some reason I had to go up to Foster Greens to identify the bodies. And there was a bit of confusion about going up, should we go up, not go up. But went up anyhow to identify the body. It was a very frosty reception, you know, there was no of this here. Oh, it was very, very frosty, that we weren't welcome at all. So it was just, there's your brother, took a blanket off him, there he was lying. Yes, is that John Murray? Get out, and that was it. So it was very, very traumatic, and very traumatic for all my family. John's wife, my 5 sisters. You know, it was a horrendous time, and there was a lot going on then. It was a bad week, Sean. It was a bad week.
What age were you then, Peter?
I was I would have been about 23, Sean.
That's your big brother now.
So I was a big brother. He sort of way. He was your big brother, he was your best mate. So at that age, you know what brothers are like, so it sort of way, played sport, we'd have socialised together, we just booked a holiday with our wives to go away, and it was a big thing getting to Spain then, everybody goes to Spain, but you know, we were due to go in that June actually on holiday, you know, so your world just came to sort of an end as you've seen it, you know.
With regards to the response that week, what sticks out in my mind was the media response to what happened at the funerals, as to how they responded to the corporals later being killed the next week. And we mustn't forget, Around that fortnight also, we had Thomas McErlean killed in South Belfast, a Catholic civilian. Kevin Mulligan, another Catholic civilian, was killed in East Belfast. You had Kevin McCracken, an IRA volunteer, killed in Gibraltar that week. And also Gillian Johnson, I think she was only 21, was killed in Fermanagh. So it was a horrific week for many other families. But what stuck with me was the media response and how our community was treated compared to how they reported the deaths of the corporals. We were treated like, you know, I mean, if you've seen the headlines in a terrorist community, like savages, and there was no context given to when the corporals were killed to what had happened in the funerals and how that badly affected our own area and how our community thought yet again there's another funeral was being attacked in Kevin Brady's funeral. I mean, how did that affect you, the media response after all that?
Well, in the context of it, sure, in any other society, you know, there was a thing happened recently in London Bridge, you know, where a guy, I think it was ISIS related, was going about stabbing people. Well, people got out and disarmed him in London Bridge, you know, and they were sort of being superheroes. Well, the 3 people who died in that graveyard, to me, Sean, like, they chased a gunman down, shooting at them, laid rounds. John got close to this guy, you know, and it was just nothing, you know. It was questioned, why was he there? Why was it in an IRA man's funeral? It wasn't to do with, he went to bury his friend and came home dead, you know. So, you know, and his bravery, none of their bravery was mentioned at all, you know. So it was as if it was just lost in the whole week of events. And as you say, our community just you were having to explain yourself, well, why was he there? Well, why should he not have been? You know, it was just a horrendous time, Sean, and hopefully them days are long gone, you know.
Yeah, and of course he was a hero. I mean, it's one thing about our community is we come together. And he's seen for what him, Thomas McErlean and Kevin Bradaigh are seen for that, you know.
Well, I must say, I come from the lower Ormeau, which is a tight-knit community, and our local community have been excellent. Bradaigh, who is our community, you know. My mum and dad passed away probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, you know, but there was always wee events there over in the local community, remembering John, that should it be the 20th anniversary, 30th anniversary, and now the family home, Bradaigh have purchased the family home. The family's home was a strange home. My daddy got a job with a corporation and worked for the Waterers, but it was a big white house. I know you might have walked about it if you walked along that walkway. So it's right on the river and sat out on its own. So the community have now bought this and it's been ring-fenced. So it's going to be named the John Murray Lockhouse, which is excellent. So it means that the name of John will live on, and you know, his name always lives along in our family for our daughters, nieces, nephews, whatever, but at least this is going to be, like, it's going to be named the John Murray Lockhouse, and a fitting tribute to John, that, you know, that he's part of our community in the Lower Ormeau Road. That's
absolutely amazing, and it's very, very important cathartic for families that we do pull together and we do look after our own. And just hearing that story, I mean, I was in an event at the weekend, and, you know, no matter what happens in any traumatic event in our community, we pull together, you know, and it's amazing to see. Like,
oh, no, Sean, it really is. And as I say about Bradaigh, and as I say, the Rossa, the GAA, Rossa were excellent, and right up even to a few weeks ago, there was a bit of a reclaiming ceremony on. So he's never been forgotten, like by our own community, and maybe by others, and, you know, but by our own people, he's still very much loved. By our family, he's still very much loved, Sean. You know,
and long may that continue, Peter. Peter, thank you for coming today. It's always great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, my friend. And that does it for another week. We'd love for you to join the conversation by sharing the link to today's programme to help us grow our audience across all our social media platforms. I'd once again like to thank our special guest, Peter Murray. In the meantime, the conversation will be back next week with more investigations and analysis. I'm Sean Murray. Bye for now.